I do also want to highlight before I get started, this book, which was just published by ATD Press, called Leading the Learning Function. And I was honored to contribute a chapter to it. And it has contributions from several L&D professionals. And together, the book is a great resource for anyone at really any level in a learning function. So I highly recommend it. And I want to thank Debbie for inviting me. I want to thank the whole ATD Houston team for having me as well. And additionally, just ATD in general, again, I want to thank them for all they do to advance our practice. So it's great to be here. So, okay. So I stated that L&D is at a defining moment in its history. We need to take a comprehensive look at our practice, what our priorities are, where we sit in the org structure, who leads us, and what our capabilities are as the world around us changes so rapidly. And it's not just the digital age, which is what I'm mainly talking about. It's also just everything that's happened this year, our pandemic year, right? And but just to set the stage, this talk is really about change and how challenging and disruptive it can and is on us and on the folks that we support in our practice. That doesn't mean everything's bad, though. As an industry built to serve others, we are filled with passionate people backed by the art and science of one of the most complex value propositions we can take on, and that's to try to change human behavior, which is, as we all know, right, one of the most complex endeavors we can undertake. But it's also one of the most rewarding. And I'll tell you, in my more than 20 years in this practice, it's almost day to day when you see someone's eyes light up, or you get that aha moment, or you get feedback that really tells you how you're helping build capability. It's just one of those things that really helps keep you propelling forward, right? So my overall message today is a positive one. There's going to be some starkness in it as well, but it's really more positive. I think as a practice, we do have some decisions to make. We have to figure out if we can really rise to the times and build a better future for the people we support and the businesses we support. It's a daunting and challenging place to be today in workplace learning and in talent development. 2020 has shown that collectively we are navigating a new uncertainty. And believe me, no one handed us, especially at Delta, no one handed us a playbook for this year at all. So that's really one reason I'm asking us to create a new one, and one that's forged not only from what's hit us this year, but one that will also move us toward, forward in the future. So let's get started. How's that sound? All right. So making predictions is complicated, as we've learned, right? Looking back to December 2019, I decided to spend New Year's Eve in Rome. And it was pretty cold there, as you can imagine. Little did I know at the time we were literally in Rome that there was a world-changing virus floating around us as we walked the streets of such a beautiful city. But during the change from one decade to another, we were making lots of predictions about our work and our futures. I mean, we were starting a new decade, right? None of us, I think, had an inkling about what was about to happen. And at Delta, we were completing the most successful year in the company's 95-year history. If you look at looking back at our records, we had a record number of people who traveled on our airline, but on all airlines. 2019 was a record travel year. And in one day, we moved over 705,000 people around the earth. And that was just in a 24-hour period, which was our biggest volume we've ever had. Our CEO was preparing a keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, which had never been keynoted by an airline executive before. And he had a lot that he shared about how we were working to transform the world of travel. And we were celebrating in February. We have this funny thing at Delta where on Valentine's Day, we celebrate our previous year's success and we just come together as a company to celebrate all of what we achieved the previous year. I don't know how the Valentine's Day things started, but it's our success sharing day. So we were celebrating that immense and pretty intense success that hit us for 2019. I mean, it was a heck of a year, right? And then came March. March is historically about new beginnings, right? Spring, a time of hope. Well, March blew in and changed everything for us with that ugly little virus, right? As the pandemic marched across the world, we quickly began to understand the tsunami that was engulfing us. And this is where leadership really matters, folks. The leadership bench you have in your company is critical when normal operations are disrupted. As we've all learned since March, the companies that were able to survive and thrive had a few things in common. It's critical to develop leaders to be able to lead during a crisis. If you haven't done that and the crisis hits, it's too late. No one alive here has led a company through a global pandemic before. But for those of you responsible for leader development, I'd urge you to ensure your programs to develop your leaders really help them deal with disasters. There's probably no more important function in today's company than to develop a bench of strong leaders who are capable of leading through crisis. This year has shown us in a heartbeat how significantly destabilizing situations can arise almost overnight. Again, we were celebrating the best travel year we've ever had, and 30 days later, 90% of our revenue was just gone, right? And so how leaders navigate situations like that makes all the difference for the success of the workforce and the business itself. So just a little side note on, the importance of leadership. At the end of the day, as we know, it's all about people, right? Are your leaders focused on taking care of their people, making sure they are supported? One thing became quickly evident for us at Delta as the pandemic unfolded. We needed to ensure our people's safety first, our customer safety as well. Our leaders immediately began hosting town hall discussions multiple times a week to update us on what was happening. The decisions they were making, they would let us know. They were pretty transparent as they could be all through this, and how those decisions were affecting the company. They put into place programs that enabled our employees to be as safe as possible. I mean, like I said, there's no playbook, so we're figuring it out almost day to day as we were going. But you must take care of your people, and you must be authentic and transparent as possible in times of crisis, because trust is of the utmost importance, especially in certain times like we had. And besides, leaders should always focus on the employee experience, as we know, right? But even more so in times of uncertainty. At the same time, our CEO is telling us that we were going to have to literally put the airline to rest, is a term he used for a while. He also stated that we had to first take care of our people. So as a company, we devised programs pretty quickly that would allow for employees to come together and do what was necessary to save the company. This is the biggest crisis, as you can imagine, that the airline industry has been in, much less hospitality and some other really, significantly affected industries. So we literally began processes to ensure the company would survive without knowing it would. And we devised an unpaid leave program for what we call an unpaid leave of absence that was open to all employees, asking them to take time away from the company if they could to help save it. We devised some robust early retirement programs because we had enjoyed several years of increasing revenue and we had not taken on significant debt and had made the right forward-thinking investments. We were well positioned, but we still needed, we were a much bigger airline in March than we needed to be. And so we had to navigate that. And we were really going through a lot of just trying to figure out how do we right size this as the whole thing. Literally, I hate to say this, it sounds cheesy, but building the plane while it's flying, right? Our leaders communicated to us that it wasn't just about profit, though, that we had a purpose. our purpose was not just to move people around the world. Our purpose became more than that. When other nations had locked down, we used our planes to help ferry Americans back, to make sure we could get them back home before they were trapped overseas or in a country where they didn't have accommodations. We also began offering free flights to ferry medical workers around to the hotspots as they kept getting more significant and random across the nation. In times of crisis, true leadership shows. And the question for us as we continue to navigate this pandemic is, what role does L&D play in ensuring there's a bench of effective leaders? Even beyond the bench of leadership, 2020 has become unlike any year ever. I think we could all agree that it seems like we were getting hit in the gut every morning with news about the effect of the pandemic on not just our businesses, but on our families and our communities as well. So I logged on to Microsoft's Build conference. I believe it was the first time they did it virtual in June, and listened to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he talked a bit about how Microsoft had undergone 2 years of digital transformation in about 2 weeks, as everyone was moving to virtual programs like Teams and that kind of thing to work from home. And isn't that so true? Like, just all of a sudden, everyone was having to figure out virtual work, and many L&D teams were faced with lots of challenges as the world locked down. That's for sure. I probably would be able to guess that most of the people in this session this morning have lived through some of that digital transformation that had to occur like you wouldn't believe. All of us had to pivot, right, with a capital P. And our training operation at Delta includes a significant amount of in-person training, as you could probably imagine. We conduct a lot of live classroom training in airports around the world. And we lead on-the-job training sessions around aircraft and with the equipment used to service that aircraft. So moving that to virtual and figuring out how to qualify the workforce to be able to complete the tasks that they need to while servicing the aircraft, away from the equipment that we need to verify that they can safely operate, was daunting, to say the least. We were really having to figure out how we could even do that. The airlines are an essential operation for the nation, so business continuity needed to ensue, and we had to keep the operation running. And the interesting thing about what we do is we qualify workers to be able to work around the aircraft from a safety and technical and compliance perspective. So our LMS is checked every time a worker logs into the system to go do their job. Their qualifications are checked against the LMS, and it gives them access to the system so they can go to work. So we are L&D is a critical part of the operation. So enabling and adapting to virtual work for our corporate teams, was quite the task. And then also just how we work together as a team. We were a very in-person team. We worked in the office. Pretty much lots of our folks were out in the airports around the world, but the rest of us were in an office here in Atlanta. So it was okay. Also, we had to spread out and become virtual that way as well, as I'm sure most of you have. So it's a lot of our plans, playbooks, wish lists, all the things we were doing were wiped away by COVID. Our training budget went to zero almost overnight as we were trying to figure out how we can survive and keep the company alive. And so, having said all that, considering the confluence of the digital age and what the pandemic has wrought, it's not too out there to think that the next 5 years for L&D will be quite transformational, probably more transformational than the last 50. And I know that's a prediction. And I started this conversation this morning saying predictions are challenging as I was walking the streets of Rome at the end of the decade. But with that being said, I do think that we have before us as a practice 3 key challenges for us to navigate as we move forward. And that's increased complexity, exponential acceleration, and a newfound responsibility to our audiences and our businesses that we support. So that's what I really want to talk about a bit more today, if you don't mind and begrudge me the time, I'll go into a little bit of detail. So the first is the evolving complexity of the workplace. The fact is that our world and our workplaces are going to be even more complex as we move through the shifts the digital age brings. We must traverse complexity in the enterprise, the design of the enterprise itself. We have to look at how the workforce is evolving and needing to adapt to the fundamental changes in how the work gets done. And based on that, we have to traverse the shifting demographics. So there are now up to 5 generations working inside some companies. And there's a significant baby boomer retirement going on right now, dramatically affecting, companies from a brain drain perspective, right? As folks are retiring in droves. And then think about the longer careers. So we're living longer every year since the 1840s. We've been adding to how long humans live. Right. So if you think about that, we're going to have the 50 and 60-year careers before long, if not already. I mean, we've celebrated a 50, I think, 3-year career in our division at Delta. So we're going to have longer careers. And then, of course, the shrinking shelf life of skills. If you think of 50 to 60-year career, the way technology and automation and all of the complexity of the workplace evolving changes, you're going to have a diminishing shelf life to skills, which means we need to have continuous development, right, as we move forward. So the reality, too, is we will be training robots and humans to work together, and we will rise to see, we will see the rise of teamwork really over individualism and how the work gets done. We'll focus more on employee experience than we ever has, as the workforce demands more from the companies in which they labor with. It's estimated that 70% of all workers need to be reskilled or upskilled as we continue integrating more automation and digitization into the workplace. And so the biggest shift also that we're living through right now, right, is accelerating due to the pandemic. And that's really, companies are now moving significant numbers of their workforce to operating remotely. And so if that doesn't add a level of complexity, all of these things together adding a level of complexity, and we sort of sit right on center stage, right? We're standing right on center stage in all of this as our practice. So workplace complexity. Second is business acceleration. So we're facing an acceleration unheard of in business history. The road we were on before the pandemic was quite transformational in its speed. But now, after the effect of the pandemic, business is accelerating even more exponentially in the areas of technology integration, customer experience and service, and product design. It took the telephone about 80 years to become ubiquitous, but it took just 50 years for us to connect 2/3 of the Earth's people to the internet. And as Ray Kurzweil, who's the director of engineering at Google, said, once a technology becomes digital, it can accelerate exponentially. So we're not going to have 100 years in this 100 years of change in this century. We're going to have about 100 years of acceleration in the next decade. So it's not going to stop, right? So this acceleration will test our abilities, when you think about it, to prevent chaos and confusion in the workplace, especially when it comes to upskilling and reskilling. If we do that too quickly, chaos and confusion, right? If we don't do it quick enough, businesses won't be able to take market share, right? Or the productivity of the business will suffer. So it really will test our business's ability to succeed in a hyper-dynamic business environment where market share is even more volatile. So business acceleration, right? So then the third is our responsibility as a practice in L&D, right? And so I think we have a heightened responsibility to justify further investment in human capital and to bring forward the evidence of that return, of a return on that investment. And so our responsibilities include developing a high-performing, more inclusive workforce, embedding learning opportunities deeper into the work environment, forecasting future capabilities and enabling lifelong continuous learning, in defining the company's responsibility to its workforce and constructing a fit-for-purpose, human-centered L&D operation, and an operating model, if you will, for the enterprise. So this is why I'm asking for a new playbook, and for L&D, and I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts on how we can start formulating this playbook and folding it into our overall learning strategies. Okay, so reorient. So I'm saying we need to reorient L&D. I think it begins with new imperatives for L&D that I call the 3 R's. We need to reset, and we need to we need to adopt new practices for how we design and deliver learning experiences, even through the crisis and initial chaos of the pandemic. Especially for us, our training operation didn't stop. Many teams, and definitely us, we found ourselves needing to quickly create virtual training strategies. And we had to abandon in-person physical training almost immediately. So going forward, we have an opportunity to take this reset and decide what aspects of it are permanent. What will we keep and what will we discard from the rapid changes that came to us unplanned? And we need to rethink. So L&D's mission, vision, and operating principles, we need to rethink those to reflect the evolving needs of the business and the workforce under new operating models. This is a call for a ground-up review of how we're funded, where we sit in the organizational structure, how the audiences we support best learn what they need to know, and how we best learn our practice and the skills we have on our L&D teams. And the known unknowns as we move forward. I've supplied everyone here a document that I crowdsourced earlier. I think Debbie said it's on the app. I crowdsourced this document earlier this year during the summer to get ideas from other learning professionals on our current state, what we need to move toward, and the potential impact if we actually made those moves. So it's a live document. You have a PDF of it on the app, but I'm going to give you a link at the end of this presentation to go to the live document where you can see what's been added. I'm trying to crowdsource it just to get ideas and perspectives from folks in our practice. And then the 3rd R is we need to rebuild. So the L&D team is what I'm talking about. We need to expand its capabilities for increased digital learning, virtual facilitation, learning analytics, coaching and mentoring, to name just a few, if you're not already doing those. And we need to think about a multidisciplinary L&D team. We need to think about expanding beyond just instructional design and providing more support in employee health and wellness, in embedding learning into the design of the work environment, in becoming the business strategy, if you will. I'm not saying L&D needs to align to the business strategy. I'm saying L&D is a core part of the business strategy and probably matters almost the most than anything else right now. And that means having more visibility to the senior leadership team, directly reporting to the CEO where possible. And I know that may sound a little bit dramatic, but I'm really serious about this. Our CEO said in January that we need to become a learning company. Every company needs to become a learning company. And if the L&D function isn't directly aligned to where the decisions are being made, then you're too far downstream. I'm still working on that at Delta. Once we get our operating model more permanent, I've already been placed upstream a little bit more, and I'm getting more visibility because we literally kept the business going, right? Your learning strategy needs to be a key part of the actual business strategy. So I think we need to reset, rethink, and rebuild our practice as we move forward. So when I was talking about learning as the business strategy, what do I really mean about that? Think about how fast the businesses have been moving towards digital maturity. But what's the number one dependency on the business when it comes to achieving that digital maturity? It's the workforce and its ability to execute on the digital strategies that every business is formulating. And right now, your CEO is not confident that the workforce has the skills to perform and to execute on those digital strategies. Every company has embarked on a reorientation of their strategic direction, and that centers around digital strategies. It's unsustainable to not be reorienting L&D with the business. If you're not already moving in that direction, it's very late. Easily half of your workforce are already skills deficient. A quarter of them may be displaced or more if they're not able to reskill or upskill quick enough. Automation is still on target to impact the workforce significantly. It's estimated that by 2025, the work hours performed by intelligent machinery will match the work hours spent by humans. That's where the majority of business investment is occurring, in workplace automation. And so business leaders have said that will cause a reduction in the human workforce. So what a challenge we face in L&D, because although the majority of corporate leaders fear workforce capability, they're not yet significantly increasing investment in L&D on the level that will accommodate the reskilling and upskilling of the workforce that we need to meet the demands of these digital strategies. So we've got to have some fundamental conversations with our senior leaders about that. And that's why I say learning really is the business strategy, and the investment in it needs to be on parity with the investments being made in formulating digital strategies across the businesses. Only the companies that embrace the digital age and appropriately prepare for the journey will survive and thrive. So to successfully navigate our workforce and our business through these twists and turns, as we evolve through this, there's three principles I want to talk about. So have you gotten used to like threes? I like to do things in threes. So we need to reset, rebuild, and rescope. We need to rethink. And now we've got three more fundamental principles that I want to share with you. The first one really, and this is for both business and L&D, because I'm not seeing a lot of separation anymore. There's not this business strategy over here, and then, oh, by the way, I'm going to do a learning strategy. These are really the same things. Business needs to understand, and a lot of them do, obviously, that technology will accelerate at an exponential and often uncomfortable pace. The same thing with L&D when you think about it, right? So if to keep our businesses competitive, L&D must be willing to rapidly test new technology and leverage it where appropriate. Your business is doing this. You must move rapidly away from the one-size-fits-all training strategy that you probably have, especially as it applies to e-learning. Bring in technology that moves you toward hyper-personalized adaptive learning. There is technology available right now that'll bring learning to life for all of your audiences that you support. Every role at every level of the L&D team must have technical acumen. Not everyone's a data scientist, we get that, but every company is a technology company now in a lot of respects. So that capability must be reflected on the learning team. McDonald's has a technology infrastructure that would amaze you, and that's just to sell hamburgers. So look at Starbucks as well. They are not a coffee company, they are a technology company. And they revolutionized the customer experience with technology. So why are we not able to use the same technology to build consumer-grade learning experiences for our employees? That's really the question we need to be going to if it's IT overlords or whoever helps make the technology decisions in our enterprises. You want to build and you need to build consumer grade learning experiences for your employees. And then we need to reframe existing problems based on advancing technology. So you're creating too much new training content, more than likely. Leverage artificial intelligence to curate relevant content that is already existing in your enterprise. L&D spends about 8% of their time curating existing content. Most of their time is spent creating new content. Too many L&D teams are content factories, just creating more content. Invest where appropriate in a manner that drives scalability and speed to market. You need consumer grade learning experiences in days to weeks, not weeks to months. I remember when Amazon came up with free delivery. Do you remember that? When they came up with free delivery, we were all kind of shocked. It's like, wow, because we all had to pay those delivery charges back in the day, right? How can they do that? And then they offered 2-day free delivery, right? And now they're asking us just to let them come into our house and set the box down, right? Or open the garage. When I was at Home Depot, what kept us up at night was realizing that Amazon was going to figure out how to get the washer and dryer installed in someone's house within an hour and a half, right? They're going to figure that out. And so, businesses are moving fast, and we have to move fast as well. L&D has to move at the speed of business. And granted, we have to get it right when we go to market with what we do, especially in safety and compliance and stuff like that. But we've got to be able to move faster, and we can leverage technology to help us do that. But we also need to place a high premium on practicality and the application of technology to solve real world problems. And, I'm saying that real world problems for customers, quite frankly, because it's really the employees that are our customers in a lot of ways. We know that. But obviously, if we build more competent and confident employees, then what do? We have more satisfied customers. So we've really got to start thinking about how L&D can remain as competitive as our businesses are. So the second principle is new business practices must accommodate the rapid pace of change. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of what's going on, especially in retail. They are doing a unprecedented change to online, right? And moving away from physical in a lot of ways. And so we're going to continue to see this pace of change. But this includes the work systems, the processes, and the constraints that are brought on by our traditional org structures. And talk about exception handling. If you really look about, or this thing called exception handling, a lot of what we train our workers to do is not what they deal with day to day. I can almost guarantee you, if you go into where the work occurs and watch how the work gets done, a significant part of what the workforce is dealing with on a day-to-day basis is not what you're training them to do. And so the reality we're facing here is that companies will be faced with reorienting themselves to accommodate new work models. And the focus on individualism will give way to more team-based work, where communication, collaboration, and other key soft skills will become more and more important for workers to succeed. People will be doing more of their work in teams. Companies must also question how the work gets done. And quite frankly, L&D needs to question more of how the work gets done. We need to be deeply involved in identifying the gaps that are there at various levels. And we need to help construct a seamless environment where risk is valued and protected with appropriate guardrails. L&D needs to get much more involved in the configuration of the work environment to ensure it's conducive to the work getting done. We know that most people learn how to do their jobs in the work environment. Remember that whole thing of informal training people learn how to do through observation, peers, leaders, the things that are just in the environment of the work they do or the workplace they're in. Less formal, and we've been doing this for years, less formal is when L&D creates performance support mechanisms or job aids that we overlay onto the work environment itself. So we'll do, paper-based or signage or in-system overlays, those kinds of things to help drive increased performance support in the work environment as it exists. I'm arguing that we need to start embedding learning into the actual design of the work environment. So, and there are even times in the past where my team has observed the configuration of work environments and then worked to change those environments and reconstruct them to motivate more learning and more engagement and collaboration in the work environment itself. We need to be involved in the physical design of workplaces. We need to be involved in the digital systems that people are going to be using so that we can embed learning opportunities into the work itself and actually be able to discuss the people perspective from how they will leverage the physical environment and the digital systems to get their work done. Leaders at every level must realize that as the company evolves its business practices, work will grow more complex, like I was saying earlier. So strategies will evolve quickly. And that's one reason I'm saying we need a new playbook, which is really kind of a sports metaphor. You need to be able to change it quickly, right? So the year-long or even the 3-year strategy or the 5-year strategy, sure, at a high level, you need to kind of look out and figure out what you're going to be doing 3 to 5 years, maybe. But the longer you go out, the more tactical your strategy will become because you just don't really have an idea of what might hit you. And just take this year, for example, right? But we have to move toward a more flexible and adaptable strategy that will accommodate quick changes, which we saw this year, right? Definitely. And then 3, a comprehensive culture of learning is required to extract the quality we need from a high-performing workforce. And skill shortages are massive, and the company has no choice but to build capability in a lot of ways within its existing workforce. The talent is going to be challenging to find on the market, if you will. And many of the skills necessary for the digital age don't exist within the confines of the company. And again, like I said, hard to find on the market. Some of them don't even exist at all. And so you're going to have to build that capability. It's even more difficult to build your strategy on the idea of buying that talent, like I just said, on the open market, because it's just probably not realistic. We must make the changes, necessary to align these 3 principles in our functions to really drive the culture of learning that's necessary, I think, for us to succeed. So getting to this new playbook. So what are you thinking about when I talk about playbook, or what am I thinking about? And I'm saying we have to take inventory of how our L&D function operates, how it measures its value, what capabilities are required to ensure it effectively formulates digital strategies that correlate to the business. Many of our leaders in corporate learning organizations still operate under the same system designed where only a few people could be taught at a time. Classroom training, even before the pandemic, still made up the majority of all formal learning delivered in a corporate setting. But the typical L&D function, kind of behind on my bullets here, sorry about that. The typical L&D function is faced with a number of challenges in how it provides measurable value to the business. The skill sets, processes, design model, methodologies all need to be questioned, along with the very structure, scope, and span of control to meet the business head on. L&D now more than ever must be the primary function. I mean, you are the primary function to ensure a high-performing workforce, right? So this is really a call for putting together, ground up, looking at everything you do. One of the things that we didn't have at Delta before COVID, I was working on it, but we didn't have a scorecard. So we didn't report out our measures of success to the business at all. And that's one of our key deliverables that we're working on now is to create a balanced scorecard so that the business at least has a good idea of where our value lies. Okay, so in too many companies today, the current L&D teams and the systems they rely on to create and deliver learning solutions are challenged with addressing this massive skills demand that I've been talking about. This is in front of us. How many L&D teams have a strategy for addressing the impact of workplace automation through reskilling and upskilling, which it's not possible through one size fits all learning, right? That's not possible. How many L&D teams are currently leveraging the science of learning and pairing it with appropriate technology to accelerate delivery of learning and are able to measure its true effectiveness? Every level of worker is going to need reskilling, and they're going to need to be retrained from the front line to the boardroom. So how many L&D teams are resourced and structured to lead this effort? The digital business strategies won't be executed by workforce knowledge alone. Knowledge is now more a commodity than ever since everyone's got access to Google. The business strategy is dependent upon a workforce that can innovatively and creatively execute. It's less about, like I said earlier, what an individual can do and more about what teams can do. So what is your strategy as it applies to really looking beyond the individual to how teams work together to get the work done? So what I'm saying is, again, here's a 3. So I've got 3 critical and necessary requirements to improve and modernize our ability to drive business value. So I'm first saying that investment must increase. Most CEOs are significantly increasing investment in technology year over year. AI technology investment is leading the way. The majority of those same CEOs are not significantly increasing investment in training the workforce. So, and too often the CLO is funded based on a headcount model combined with maybe some program level needs. Many senior executives underestimate the capability of their workforce, or they don't even really know what their workforce is capable of as they formulate these strategies. And so what you need to do is recognize the gap is unsustainable, right? We're in the middle of that. So I think it's easy for us to recognize that. But there must be investment in training, and we need to make the case for that with our senior leaders. And you know, the consequences of the workforce incapable of performing to the needs of the business, we know what happens there, right? So it's really up to us to figure out how we close that gap and how we get that increased investment that we need for the workforce training. I also am saying we need to restructure and reposition L&D. For L&D to proactively respond and lead the workforce skills pivot that's necessary, it must be repositioned in the enterprise. It must be moved into the strategic planning process. It must have its scope and span of control broadened so that it's not, or so that it is involved in overall work planning, has a direct line of reporting and accountability to the CEO. New skilling for the L&D team is necessary as well so that it can move beyond just preparing the workforce for the job skills, but also consulting with the business on how to reconfigure the workplace to make it more amenable to lifelong and career-long learning. And then rescoping L&D. So the most significant impact of the digital age on the workforce won't be on the number of jobs lost. It will be on the ability of the workforce to execute within the new parameters of work. Traditional job architectures are already outdated and are prohibiting the business from acquiring and retaining the best talent. As all jobs across the enterprise are re-architected, L&D must be involved in that conversation to ensure the job requirements really do align to the dynamics of how the work gets done. Job roles can't be simply rewritten on paper. They must be completely reimagined, and the environment in which the work occurs, as I've been saying, needs to be rescoped as well. A significant number of those job roles will involve humans and intelligent machines working together. And so how do you determine how to best train both people and robots or intelligent machinery to work together? And you've got to really focus on these work models as being an important contributor to how you design the right training strategy, because how do you allocate tasks? How are tasks allocated between machines and people? I think L&D is well positioned here. I mean, we obviously focus on the humanity. We want to keep the humanity of work as much as possible. So our senior leaders need to understand our value proposition as a trusted partner in this process moving forward. And we definitely want to make sure that our voice is active in that conversation when the jobs start getting re-architected. So on reskilling, when you think about it, reskilling is a core capability of any organization. But we're also kind of in a paradox here because talent pools are getting smaller, not bigger. You need time to transition the workforce to the capabilities needed. We're entering a state, quite frankly, of crisis as we must migrate millions of individuals to new skills. Companies must now start including individual development plans to attract the top talent. And employees are not interested in joining a company as a closed market anymore. They want and need development, and they understand that. They see the skills as marketable, right? Everyone sees their skills as marketable, and they want reskilling. They understand reskilling as a shared process between them and the company, that they've got accountability and responsibility as well, but they expect companies to invest in their development. And they now expect the company to offer these reskilling opportunities before going to layoffs. And so although technology has forever altered the world of work, we're not facing a revolution in work itself just yet. We're facing the acceleration of a shift in how the work gets done. And it's a nuance, but it's really important, right? So the rapid dissolution of current work processes, tasks, job architectures, and compensation, as we collectively know them, are beginning to alter our expectations of how we work. And we can see some of that happening this year with virtual work, right? So the confluence of the pandemic, technology, and employee expectations have disrupted a lot of our work processes, and it's changing this economy of work, if you will. What is being created is a new digital labor economy, and the disruption cuts across every industry. So change will not come as incremental alterations to which businesses can easily adapt, right? But it's going to be rather coming to us as fundamentally, potentially destabilizing transitions that will require substantial investment. We're in one of those now, right? And that's where we have to have new strategic thinking, much more agility, and much more visibility as a key part of the business strategy. So what I'm saying is the fundamental truth is in front of us. We must act to develop and execute this transition to digital now. What may take 10 to 15 years for technologies such as AI to significantly affect most industries, the infrastructure is being put into place now. And we need to also start working on our infrastructure to reduce that skills gap and try to prevent the massive job losses and an uneven distribution of capabilities within our companies. Every L&D team really should be focused on devising its digital strategies to ease the transition and become the strategy that the business and the workforce needs. So just a little bit of kind of what happened or what's been happening with my team at Delta. 35% of my team took an early departure program that Delta offered. It's cut our team down to what I call the bare minimum threshold of capability. We're required to qualify, like I mentioned, our airport agents on the duties they perform in their roles. So we've had to quickly adapt with almost half our team gone with how we do that. And we're not able to backfill a lot of roles because we're just trying to keep functioning. But we're committed to excellence in this when it comes to customer service and safety. So this is a case study of resilience, if you will, and how we rebuild an airline and really determine how best to rebuild the learning team. So it's been quite a year. We do know that for the airline industry, more automation will accelerate in our operations. We are integrating electric vehicles much quicker than we were before. We've created a new data analytics operation on our learning team. Remember, I mentioned the balanced scorecard, but we're also really looking to provide a proactive view of safety training compliance so that no worker goes without being in compliance to what they need to know to do and be compliant to as it applies to the rules. And we're dedicating resources to new standards of clean on the aircraft, right? And we're permanently altering everything we do as it applies to cleaning, right? And making sure that there's a standard of clean available at all times. Definitely our world changed. We're changing with it. If you combine the pandemic with the digital age, it's a fundamental realignment of what work and business really means for all of us. Out of this, we will build a new airline. 95 years ago, Delta started as a regional crop dusting company and evolved into a Fortune 60 company and one of the largest US airlines. We will see what we rebuild as, but I know that we'll come out of this most challenging time in our history definitely leaner and meaner than we were before. That's for sure. So what I'd like to do is give you, that's my presentation this morning. I know it's a lot of stuff. It's dense. I'm really calling for us to reimagine and reorient. That's 2 more R's. Maybe I have 5 R's. But I also want to give you a playbook example. If you can copy that URL down, there's a playbook example there that I actually created for my team. And then also there's this collaborative document, changes needed in L&D for the digital age, at that other URL. And one thing I'd like to leave you with, it's a fundamental human trait to work. And people will always be finding new and imaginative ways to get their work done. It wasn't too long ago that people were paid to spend their day sitting in an elevator, making sure other people arrived at the floors they wanted to get to. Work constantly changes, and too often we overestimate the changes that will occur within just a few years, and we underestimate changes that will occur in the next decade or two. But as this digital age continues to unfold, L&D will need to become a honeycomb of ideas and innovation, a place of invention and creativity that provides the training and resources for a workforce that must deliver more complex products, personalized services in such a rapidly changing world. I think we need to begin now formulating our new playbook for the digital age. And I leave you with these examples of just some of what I'm trying to do with my team at Delta. So thank you very much for the time today. I'm just a few minutes under time, I believe. Debbie, if there are any questions, I would love to take some if there's time.
Thank you, Brandon. I think everybody's really enjoyed the session quite a bit. There's been a lot of comments in the chat box. Just want to remind everybody that you can get his resources out on the app, and we've also put those in this chat box as well. Does anybody have any questions for Brandon? I think I just see a lot of accolades for you, Brandon.
Well, it's just a lot of stuff. This is my email address. I engage quite a bit on LinkedIn. If you have any feedback, questions, or comments, please do not hesitate to send them my way. I love just engaging in conversation about the future of our practice. And Debbie, ATD Houston, thank you all for having me. And I hope the conference is just as exciting as the schedule looks like it will be. So thank you again so much.